Right now,
Today
53
we'll tackle tough times in
The
California.
economic troubles facing San Diego will be the focus of Mayor Jerry Sanders' annual State of the City
reports
address.
a 60% hike in rapes where either one or both
Will be
people
a long process. UCLA researchers track the progress of 50 sarcoma patients using
From the KPBS studios, this is San Diego Week.
Hello, I'm Joanne Ferry, and thanks for joining us. A Carlsbad biotech firm is playing an instrumental role in identifying a rare strain of E. coli that's causing a deadly outbreak in Europe. 2 San Diego families were lost to murder-suicides in the past 2 weeks. We'll speak with an expert about how a community copes. And the economic recovery isn't in recovery mode lately. We'll tell you what's happening with home prices and unemployment. Plus, a feature report tonight on 2 San Diego graduates, the first in their families to get college degrees. That's coming up on San Diego Week. But first, the headlines. KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma joins me from the News Center with this week's headlines. Amitha?
The economy may be losing steam again. Employers added only 54,000 jobs in May, just a quarter of the jobs added in April, spurring fears that the economic recovery is weakening. Meanwhile, major retailers say consumers are not spending as much as they did last year. Worries about rising food and gas prices have prompted shoppers to curb spending. It was not a good week for San Diego County hospitals. The state fined 5 local hospitals for preventable errors. Some of the mistakes included 2 fatal drug overdoses and leaving a 28-inch guide wire inside a patient after surgery. The fireworks will go off as planned at La Jolla Cove this 4th of July. A judge late this afternoon issued a 90-day stay of an earlier ruling requiring an extensive environmental review that will carry us well past Independence Day. For a comprehensive look at today's news, visit our website, kpbs.org.
A rare and virulent strain of E. coli is causing a deadly outbreak in Europe. The United Nations World Health Organization has confirmed the E. coli infection has sickened 3,500 people and at least 45 people have died. Infections from E. coli are typically transmitted by consuming contaminated food or water. A local company, Life Technologies, a biotech firm in Carlsbad, is helping identify the precise strain causing the outbreak. Mark Gardner is the Vice President of Life Technologies, and he joins me now to explain how identifying the strain can actually help stop the outbreak. Now, Mark, let's first of all describe this machine and what it does.
Okay, well, the Ion Torrent Personal Genome Machine is a novel technology because it combines the speed, simplicity, and scalability of semiconductors with traditional methods of biological analysis. And so what that enables us to do is to decompose the entire genome of an organism like E. coli within a matter of a few hours. And heretofore, that might have taken weeks to do.
And why is that important? What information do you get when you sequence a genome? What is that telling you?
Well, it tells you what's different between this strain and previous strains of E. coli. And so that's important because if you want to identify unique markers for this strain that might enable people to test and know that patients are afflicted with this more deadly version, it's important to have those markers at your disposal and to get that out as quickly as possible for health professionals to use.
So would they be able to, would doctors, nurses then, based on this information, treat somebody differently, a different antibiotic, a different remedy?
Well, in this particular case, they found that this E. coli is actually resistant to various forms of antibiotics. And so that piece of information is actually very helpful, so that as you're guiding treatment, you would not use those, but you would choose a different form of therapy.
How did your company get involved with this outbreak in Europe?
Well, Life Technology is a global firm. We have revenues of over $3.5 billion, and fundamentally, we do a lot of business in Europe, obviously. And we partner with customers who are in public health organizations and research organizations the world over to enable them through novel technologies to do their job better and faster and cheaper.
So is this sort of one of the first times that technology like this has been used in a crisis like this?
Well, no. Folks have been trying to use technology like this for a while, but the ability to do this as rapidly as we've done with the Ion Torrent PGM, or a personal genome machine, is actually what makes it so novel. So historically, that might have taken weeks, and now it's taken a matter of hours.
And was that sort of the intent of this kind of device to begin with, or this instrument, was to sort of serve this purpose in this kind of situation?
Absolutely. The next generation sequencing space is like many other technology spaces where more and more people are able to access these incredibly innovative technologies, and the intent of the personal genome machine was to democratize sequencing so that average researchers would have access to this incredible novel technology.
And finally, just in terms of what's going on, is there sort of any new information that your company's been sort of helped sort of obtain through all of this?
Well, I think the main thing is that we are working with public health organizations to enable them to more rapidly address these outbreaks. We are a much more global and interconnected society, and it's important that as these public health incidents occur, that we get as rapid of a response as possible. And our hats off to the public health officials who are so on top of this. And obviously our thoughts and prayers go to all the folks in Germany as well.
Mark Gardner, thank you so much, Life Technologies. And the World Health Organization has prepared a list of ways to protect yourself against foodborne illness. Here now on the screen, we're going to show you 5 ways to consume safer food. Of course, many of them very obvious: washing your hands before handling food and often during food preparation. Separate raw material, poultry and seafood, from other foods. Remember to cook food thoroughly, especially meat, poultry, eggs, and seafood. And here's an important one: don't leave cooked food at room temperature for more than 2 hours. And of course, always use safe water and raw materials in that cooking process. Well, the so-called economic recovery has hit a major snag. Home prices have fallen to new lows. Consumer spending is weak. And today, the Labor Department reported only 54,000 jobs were added in May. KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma sat down with San Diego Union Tribune business writer Dean Calbreth earlier today to find out what it all means for San Diegans and their pocketbooks.
So there was a lot of disappointing economic news this week. Let's start with the latest. Today, the Labor Department reported that only 54,000 jobs were created nationally. What were the trends in San Diego?
Well, so far San Diego, as nationwide, we've been adding just this incremental number of jobs over the past, since the beginning of the year. And our unemployment rate has been coming down incrementally, but not by nearly enough that you would expect after, in the wake of the biggest recession in history, and not by at all what we need to really pull out of our slump. And that's what's really depressing people on Wall Street and in the nation now.
So what do these statistics say about the so-called economic recovery?
That it is very slow, that it is in a serious chance of going into a double dip. And part of that, there are a lot of reasons for that. Part of it has to do with government cutbacks. Actually, nationwide, we had more than 80,000 jobs added last month in the private sector, but we had 30,000 jobs lost in the public sector. And, when people think about those public sector jobs being lost, they think, oh, well, we can afford that because it means we'll have to pay lower taxes to pay these guys' salaries. But what they don't really take into account is that does boost up the unemployment rate, that it means fewer people paying money for their goods, fewer people paying rent. I mean, it has a wide-ranging impact. And these layoffs are going to continue, and these cutbacks are going to continue.
Let's talk about consumer confidence. You did a story in today's Union Tribune saying that shoppers are really pinching their pennies. What are they not buying?
They are being very slow. About half of the people in the economy are still just trying to live from paycheck to paycheck, and they are being very reluctant to buy things, even as necessities like clothing. They're postponing clothing purchases. They're concentrating on the things they need today, on food, on gasoline. And gasoline prices going up is one of the reasons the economy is weakening too. Gasoline prices having been at $4 for a while now, coming down. But in previous economies, that would have been enough to throw us into a recession. So, and that's making people pinch their pennies more, making people study their purchases more. Even if you've got money, chances are you are really thinking a lot before you buy something these days.
So the Standard & Poor's Case-Shiller Index for housing prices slipped 3.6% from March of last year. What are the numbers for San Diego?
For San Diego, our index, the San Diego local index, pretty much coincides with that, or with the NASDAQ index, which has been actually slightly worse, I believe. You know, a lot of our companies are high-tech oriented, and they're on the NASDAQ. But in general, the investment scene is very iffy right now because of concerns about the economy, not only locally, not only in the United States, but also abroad. You know, we look at Greece, the possibility that that might cause a real slowdown throughout Europe. Europe buys our goods, that will affect us. We look at the economy in China overheating and inflation rising, people being concerned about a real estate bubble there. You know, they produce our goods and that affects us. So, you know, there is a lot of cause for concern, a lot of cause for jitters that have nothing to do actually with the companies themselves.
Okay, thank you very much.
From the headlines, it would appear the shocking tragedies were the same. 2 families, 2 children in each, all dead following what police believe were murder-suicides. But the killings, just days apart, were apparently motivated by vastly different factors. The bodies of the Pimienta family were found at their southeast San Diego home. The mother drowned in the bathtub, the father and 2 daughters dead in the swimming pool. Notes left behind indicate both parents likely planned the murder-suicide. And earlier this week, another mother, Mary Alvarez, and her 12-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son were strangled to death in their Chula Vista town home. Alvarez's former boyfriend was the suspect. He was found dead under a freeway bridge in apparent suicide. Binding these troubling stories is our need to learn the details. But is our need to know a morbid curiosity, or do we want to compare the facts to our own circumstances to reassure ourselves that such a terrible thing could never happen to our families? My guest tonight is David Peters, a licensed family psychotherapist with a private practice in Mission Valley. David, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
What is it about tragedies like these that draws us in and makes us want to know all of these details?
I think it really depends upon how the press handles the story. If they give us the facts but no video or audio, we can be shocked and horrified, but we're not drawn in. But as soon as we see the faces of those lost and we see children crying, neighbors in tears, those who are grieving, and we hear the story of the family and their drama, then we're drawn in. Then we feel like we know them. And then comes the curiosity. We want to follow the story. So it's very dependent upon how the press handles this story.
So I'm a mom, lots of moms and dads out there. I mean, I think what you do as a parent, when you hear stories like this, you feel this need to sort of compare or contrast. What happened there that led to all of this? Is that part of all of this as well? We're sort of looking at circumstance comparing to our lives?
In some cases, especially in the case of a mass murder or a kidnapping, as we see, we feel the direct threat to our children because we know it could happen to them. In these 2 cases, these were events within a family, and so I think there'd be less of a feeling of threat for ourselves. You know in your family no one's going to commit a murder-suicide, and so there's just the horror of what you see, but you can empathize with them. The closer you are with them, of course, the more likely you are to be grieving with them. And so if you're one of the neighbors, then you feel the loss of the whole family.
We know that each story was different. There was very different motive involved in these tragedies. One seemed to be some financial crisis, at least in terms of the letters that were left behind. Mm-hmm. Another, a boyfriend that was rejected. But can we find things that are common between these stories as well?
Yes, yes. It is difficult to find something in common. The public needs to know the stories are completely unrelated. They get reported in the press as if they're one story, and it can scare people. But the stories are really completely unrelated. But what they do have in common is that there is someone in the situation who is so afraid, so desperate, so fearful, or so angry that they lose their rational thought. And we're all vulnerable to this to one degree or another. In the Pimienta case, you have a couple who make a plan together, it seems. And in the Alvarez case, you have an abuser. And in either of these cases, someone is experiencing the threat of great loss, the threat of losing everything that they own or everything that they value. And when that happens, rational thought disappears. What you have is the limbic system of the brain gets excited, and that triggers the fight or flight response, in which the body and the brain are gearing up to either fight aggressively or to escape. And if we can't escape, well, what's left is the fight, to do something. And the more that fight or flight response is activated, the less the rational thinking of the brain is able to occur. The prefrontal cortex, right back here, where we do that common sense thinking, well, what should I really do? That practically can turn off when the fight or flight response is activated. And so in a moment of desperation, people truly aren't thinking clearly. They're acting from a very primitive part of the brain. It's as if, in the case of an abuser, it's similar to giving a 9-month-old infant a gun, and when it wants its mother, as the mother leaves the room, an infant would not think clearly and would do anything to get mom back in the room. And frequently, violent abusers are children inside, and they think like children, even though they have the capacity to kill like an adult.
In the end, how does a community get through this? How do we respond when we read and learn more about these tragedies?
Well, I think the important thing is to remember the word community. It's in community that we can take care of one another. Good mental health, good physical well-being takes place when a community stays in relationship with one another. In these cases, you had a family disconnect from their friends. They didn't tell them what they were considering doing. They pulled away. And frequently in the case of an abuser, frequently the abuse victim has pulled away from family or friends. She's hiding the fact that she's being abused. And so at this time, we have people grieving, and we have children grieving, and I think we need to connect with them and integrate them more fully into the community to help them take care of themselves.
David Peters, thanks so much for being here.
Always good to be with you, Joanne.
Records released this week by the San Diego Police Department show the number of citizen complaints against officers has risen in recent years. But the police department says there's a good reason for that. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr joins me now with the explanation. Katie, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Let's start off with the numbers, first of all. How many police misconduct cases were recorded by the department last year?
The department received just over 2,400 complaints about misconduct from the public.
And do we know how serious these complaints are?
The complaints are set up into two different categories based on how serious they are. The more serious include things like use of excessive force, criminal conduct on the job. The less serious include things like not being courteous and violating certain procedures.
Now, I started off by saying that this number seems to be going up. So there were 1,800 complaints in 2006, more now. Do we know why the increase?
Well, the police department says part of the reason might be that in the middle of 2008, they switched how they record complaints, separating them out into these two different categories. And they say that once they made that category for less serious complaints, calls that might not otherwise have been recorded or now formally documented, and so that made the less serious complaints go up a bit. The more serious have stayed about around 70s, 80s over the years, although it doesn't explain why. Since that change was made, total complaints do continue to go up, and they didn't have an explanation for that.
And we know this is all sort of in the middle of the ongoing controversy with the number of officers being accused of several things lately. So who investigates all of this now? Who looks into these charges?
Well, the majority of complaints are resolved in the field. A supervisor will go out and resolve it at the scene. The rest are referred to the Internal Affairs Unit. From there, for instance, in 2010, they did 82 investigations. Of those, they say about generally 10%, they usually find misconduct actually occurred. But 80 is pretty consistent over the last 5 years. They've done between like 93 and 75 investigations a year.
Okay, Katie Orr, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
About 40% of Americans over 25 have a college degree. The Obama administration says raising that rate is key to the country's economic future. KPBS education reporter Kyla Calvert brings us the stories of two local grads who could be part of that increase. They are the first in their families to complete a college degree.
It signals the start of summer. Thousands of college students donning robes and mortarboards to walk across a stage and receive the diploma they've been working toward for years.
So I'll be getting a BS in statistics, and I'll be graduating today at 4 p.m. I'm really excited about it.
San Diego State University's Anthony Porter is the first in his family to complete a college degree. He's beaten some tough odds. First-generation college students are more likely to drop out after their first year than students whose parents have college degrees. Those who stay are less likely to be on track to complete their degree after 3 years.
All right, there it is.
Porter says he owes his success to his supportive family and SDSU's Educational Opportunity Program for first-generation and low-income students.
They really help you pick your classes and help you to, really find the resources you need around campus. They gave me an opportunity to be a mentor, so I was able to do one-on-one mentoring with a lot of students. It just feels so good when you see them grow and you see them getting good grades and stuff like that.
Porter did more than just graduate.
The 2011 baccalaureate with academic excellence in statistics, Anthony Porter.
Porter's mother, Kelly, says she never doubted he would shine as a college student.
Anthony, he was so focused on whatever it was. And he was like the only kid that was always doing homework, literally. And I don't know why. I didn't push him, he just did. He had to finish it, he had to do it. Once he found what he loved, it was just no doubt. So it was pretty simple after that, It's just exciting. He did it.
Being the first in the family to take a step into higher education is part of the culture across town at San Diego City College. About a third of the students are first-generation college attendees. Marissa Gonzalez has spent 3 years earning 2 associate's degrees. One is in biology, the other in behavioral and mental health. The honors student says she had to give college a couple of tries. She first enrolled in 2006.
The reason I wanted to start school was because I was bored at home. I got tired of it, and when I went to school, I found out that I had a dilemma because I didn't like school either, and so I decided to drop and just hang out with my so-called friends and party.
When she re-enrolled in 2008, something changed.
In high school, I never really, like I said, read my assignments or did anything. And when I actually started reading and doing everything the professor told me to do, I realized, wow, I'm learning something new. And so this is the key to success.
But her newfound love of learning wasn't all it took to keep her in school. She also joined the college's MESA, or Math, Engineering, and Science Achievement Alliance. Gonzalez says the program helped keep her on track, even when school seemed like too much.
I just have to sit there, let my tears run down my face, and say, well, bring me back to the block 1 where I started. And there's been challenges, I'm not gonna lie, where I did want to give up, but I didn't.
Marissa Gonzalez, Associate in Arts with high honors, Associate in Science with high honors.
Realizing how her parents struggled to support her and her 2 sisters on minimum wage salaries was part of what pushed Gonzalez into school. And with her family on hand to see her graduate, she says she's surprised by how far she's come in the last 3 years.
It's still surreal to me that I've accomplished this, and I heard the first degree is the hardest, and so I know that I'm able to do anything past this associate's degree. So I'm excited and I'm really happy.
Gonzalez is already enrolled in a program to get a bachelor's degree in nursing. Her husband, Steven, says the example she's setting could pave the way for another degree earner.
For sure, it was inspiring and made me check myself, and say, hey, I can do it too. Our family can do it too. And we want a whole line of scholars, in our family. It'd be something really great to see.
Thank you, Mom.
Great story. That was Kyla Calvert reporting. And now here's Amitha Sharma with an update on what KPBS is working on for next week.
Coming up next week on KPBS, flush with several million in unexpected revenues, the San Diego City Council will debate and vote Monday on the coming year's budget. The extent of cuts in hours at libraries and recreation centers, as well as the need for ongoing brownouts of engines at certain fire stations, are among controversial items to be debated.
Thanks, Amitha. All of the stories you saw tonight can be viewed on our website at kpbs.org/SDWeek. And now here's a look at your weekend weather forecast. Thanks for watching. Good night.